There is a seed sitting in millions of kitchens. Small, amber-colored, slightly bitter. It is toasted in oil, ground into spice blends, mixed into bread, boiled into tea. And for centuries it was simply called food. This is Trigonella Fenugreekum. In South Asia, it is Methi. In the Mediterranean, it flavored bread and stews. In traditional medicine systems, it was prescribed for digestion, lactation, and blood sugar balance. It was not exotic. It was ordinary. Ordinary enough to grow easily in small plots, sprout in a window tray, and be stored in jars without refrigeration. It required no branding, no extraction, no encapsulation. Then something changed. Not the plant, the market. Today, fenugreek appears in supplement aisles labeled metabolic support, glucose balance, testosterone booster, lactation enhancer, encapsulated, standardized, marketed. The same seed once scooped from a spice jar now sits in plastic bottles at 20 times the price per gram. The chemistry did not change, the packaging did. For generations, traditional systems observed fenugreek's effects. It contains soluble fiber that slows carbohydrate absorption. It contains compounds, such as diosgenin, linked to hormonal research. It has been studied for its influence on blood sugar regulation, but none of this required industrial processing. Whole seeds delivered it. Sprouted leaves delivered it. Methi was food first, medicine second. Modern markets reversed that order. Medicine became product. Product became premium. Premium became identity. The transformation was subtle. You can still buy fenugreek cheaply in a grocery store. But the narrative shifted. The kitchen became informal. The capsule became official. And when something becomes official, it becomes monetizable. Before fenugreek was bottled, it was blended, not into pills, into meals. Trigonella Fenugreekum was never treated as an emergency intervention in traditional households. It was integrated quietly into daily diets. In South Asia, fresh methi leaves were cooked into lentils and flatbreads. The bitterness was not accidental. Bitterness signaled function. Traditional food systems did not eliminate bitter compounds the way modern processed diets often do. They incorporated them. Bitter plants stimulate digestion. They influence appetite. They balance heavy starches. Fenugreek seeds were soaked and consumed in the morning, added to pickles, ground into spice blends, sprouted for salads. This constant, low-level exposure created metabolic moderation without calling it treatment. In Mediterranean regions, fenugreek flavored breads and herbal preparations. In ancient Egypt and later Greco-Arab medical traditions, it was noted for digestive and lactation support. But even in those systems, fenugreek was rarely isolated. It was combined, mixed with other herbs, cooked into broths, taken as tea. The difference matters. When a compound is isolated, it becomes dosage. When a plant is integrated into food, it becomes rhythm. Modern health crises, particularly metabolic disorders, are often addressed through supplementation after imbalance has already formed. Blood sugar spikes are treated once diagnosed. Cholesterol is managed once elevated. But traditional dietary patterns that included fenugreek operated preventatively. Soluble fiber in fenugreek seeds slows gastric emptying. That moderates glucose absorption. When seeds are consumed with carbohydrate-heavy meals, the glycemic impact softens. No capsule required, no prescription required, just food design. The shift away from these food patterns did not occur because fenugreek stopped working. It occurred because diets industrialized. Refined flour replaced whole grains, sugar consumption increased, fiber intake declined. Bitterness was bred out of vegetables to satisfy market preference. Meals became faster, sweeter, more uniform. And as metabolic disorders rose globally, the search for corrective compounds intensified. Research began isolating what traditional kitchens had been using all along. But isolation changes value. Once a compound is studied in laboratories, it enters pharmaceutical language. Once in pharmaceutical language, it enters patent-adjacent marketing. Once in marketing, it becomes niche. The plant remained cheap in bulk form, but its extract became premium. The knowledge never vanished, it was reframed. For centuries, fenugreek was trusted through repetition. It did not need clinical trials to justify its place in food. It did not need standardized extracts to prove its effects. It was observed. If digestion improved, it stayed in the recipe. If blood sugar felt steadier, it remained in the morning ritual. If lactation increased, it was passed to the next generation. This is how traditional systems operate, through continuity. Then modern science entered the conversation. Researchers began isolating compounds inside Trigonella funagraecum. They identified soluble fibers such as galactomannan, known to slow carbohydrate absorption. They studied amino acid derivatives like 4-hydroxyisoleucine, associated with insulin response modulation. They examined steroidal saponins such as diosgenin, which attracted interest in hormonal and pharmaceutical research. Clinical studies suggested fenugreek supplementation could reduce fasting blood glucose levels in certain populations. Other studies examined cholesterol markers. Some explored testosterone claims. The science did not invent fenugreek's properties, it translated them. But translation changes power. When a plant moves from kitchen knowledge to peer-reviewed publication, its cultural position shifts. It becomes validated, and validation in modern economies often precedes commercialization. Soon, fenugreek extracts appeared in standardized dosages, capsules labeled with precise milligram counts, clinically studied, science-backed, standardized for potency. The framing subtly changed. Fenugreek was no longer simply food, it became intervention. Intervention suggests deficiency. Deficiency suggests urgency. Urgency drives purchasing behavior. Meanwhile, the original seed remained inexpensive in bulk markets. You could buy 500 grams of whole fenugreek seeds for the cost of a small supplement bottle. But perception influences consumption more than chemistry. A capsule appears concentrated, measured, official, reliable. A spoonful of seeds appears informal, unquantified, old-fashioned. Modern consumers often trust laboratory language more than inherited practice. And industries understand this. When compounds are isolated, they become brandable. When standardized, they become scalable. When marketed towards specific health outcomes, they become profitable. The supplement industry thrives not only on innovation, but on reframing. Reframing transforms common plants into specialized solutions. Fenugreek did not become more powerful in a capsule, it became more marketable. There is another layer. Modern diets often lack fiber. They are heavy in refined carbohydrates. Under such conditions, fenugreek's soluble fiber appears corrective. But in traditional diets rich in whole grains and legumes, fenugreek functioned as reinforcement, not repair. The shift from reinforcement to repair reflects dietary transformation. We removed bitter, fibrous components from daily food, and then reintroduced them as supplements. Science did not distort fenugreek. It confirmed aspects of what tradition already practiced, but confirmation triggered commodification, and commodification altered accessibility. The transformation of fenugreek did not require removing it from kitchens. It required repositioning it. Trigonella funagraecum never became rare. It never became difficult to grow. It never required complex extraction to remain useful. What changed was the narrative around where its value resides. In traditional systems, fenugreek was preventive. A spoon soaked overnight, leaves folded into bread dough, seeds tempered in oil before lentils were added, small doses, repeated daily, integrated into meals. Modern wellness culture prefers concentration, extracted compounds, measured capsules, single-function claims, blood sugar support, testosterone optimization, fat metabolism booster. These claims isolate one biological pathway and elevate it above context. Context matters. Fenugreek's metabolic effects are strongest when consumed alongside carbohydrates, not separate from food. But capsules are often marketed as standalone solutions. Take 2 before meals, take 1 daily. Dosage becomes detached from diet design. The wellness industry operates on urgency. Pre-diabetes rates rise, metabolic syndrome increases. Consumers seek correction. Correction is easier to sell than habit change. Changing daily cooking patterns is slow. Buying a bottle is immediate. So fenugreek shifts categories again, from food to supplement to solution. The economics follow predictably. A kilogram of fenugreek seeds in bulk markets is inexpensive. The same kilogram, converted into standardized extract capsules, packaged, branded, and sold through retail channels, multiplies in price. Processing adds cost. Marketing adds cost. Distribution adds cost. But so does perception. Capsules are associated with seriousness. They signal intervention. And intervention commands higher margins than spice. There is nothing inherently wrong with supplements. Standardization can be useful. Dosage consistency matters in certain clinical contexts. But the shift reveals something deeper. When health compounds are separated from food culture, they become commodities rather than habits. Habits are hard to monetize repeatedly. Commodities are easier. If fenugreek remains in the kitchen, its value circulates locally. If it moves to the supplement aisle, its value flows upward through corporate supply chains. The plant did not demand this shift. Consumer behavior enabled it. Modern schedules compress cooking time. Ultra-processed foods dominate supermarket space. Bitterness, and once balanced, is removed to satisfy preference for sweetness and neutrality. And when metabolic imbalance follows, consumers search for corrective agents. Fenugreek becomes one of many ingredients marketed as restoration. Ironically, restoration often means reintroducing elements traditional diets never removed. The seed remains the same. The surrounding system changed. Fenugreek was never rare. It did not grow only in hidden valleys. It did not require laboratories to unlock its value. It did not wait for validation to begin working. Trigonella phenum graecum functioned quietly inside ordinary meals long before metabolic health became a global industry. The real transformation was not chemical, it was structural. Traditional food systems embedded prevention into daily routine. Bitterness moderated sweetness, fiber slowed absorption, spices stimulated digestion, meals were layered. Fenugreek was not taken after imbalance appeared. It was taken so imbalance would be less likely to appear. Modern systems reversed this order. We simplified meals, refined grains, increased sugar density, reduced fiber. We removed complexity from food, and then reintroduced complexity through supplementation. This reversal created a new economy. Prevention does not generate recurring urgency. Correction does. If you cook with fenugreek regularly, you are not responding to a diagnosis. You are building metabolic rhythm. But rhythm is invisible. It does not create dramatic before and after marketing. Capsules, however, promise targeted response. Lower your blood sugar, support your hormones, enhance performance. Specific claims are easier to monetize than broad habits. The irony is subtle but powerful. Fenugreek's most consistent benefits emerge when consumed as part of food patterns. Its soluble fiber interacts with carbohydrates in the same meal. Its compounds influence digestion over time. It is cumulative, not instantaneous. But cumulative habits require culture, and culture cannot be packaged easily. The supplement industry thrives in fragmented lifestyles. When meals are irregular, when cooking time declines, when processed food dominates, capsules feel efficient. Efficiency replaces tradition, yet efficiency often isolates what was meant to be integrated. There is another dimension. When a plant remains in the kitchen, knowledge remains decentralized. Grandmothers pass recipes, families teach preparation methods, communities maintain flavor memory. When that plant moves to capsules, knowledge shifts upward. Formulas are proprietary. Extract percentages are standardized. Brands define authority. Authority centralizes. Price increases. The same seed that costs little in bulk markets becomes premium when stripped of culinary context. It is not that supplements are deception. It is that they reflect a deeper shift. Food moved from foundation to accessory. Correction moved from rare necessity to constant pursuit. The metabolic crisis visible across many modern societies did not emerge because fenugreek disappeared. It emerged because food systems simplified around refined calories. High glycemic carbohydrates became staples. Fiber intake declined. Bitterness was engineered out of vegetables to improve consumer appeal. And once that imbalance took hold, the search for corrective ingredients accelerated. Fenugreek entered that search. But it had never left. It was still in spice jars, still growing easily in small plots, still sprouting on kitchen windowsills. The difference is attention. Attention moved from preparation to supplementation, from cooking to purchasing, from food literacy to label literacy. When you read a supplement bottle, you look for milligrams. When you cook with fenugreek, you look for balance. Balance is harder to quantify. Milligrams are easier to sell. The question is not whether fenugreek works. Research suggests it influences metabolic markers in meaningful ways for certain populations. The question is whether isolating it from food culture enhances or diminishes its long-term value. When health compounds are removed from daily meals and converted into corrective tools, health becomes episodic, something you manage when numbers rise, something you address when symptoms appear. Traditional systems treated health as continuous. Fenugreek was part of that continuity. Not heroic, not dramatic, just present. The deeper story is not about one seed. It is about the transition from food-based prevention to product-based correction. Modern supply chains favor products. Products scale. Products can be patented, branded, distributed. Prevention through cooking scales more slowly. It requires time, knowledge, habit. And habits do not create quarterly earnings spikes. They create stability. Stability is less visible than crisis. Crisis sells. Stability sustains. Fenugreek survived every shift. It survived the movement from village fields to global supermarkets. It survived the transition from spice jar to supplement aisle. It survived the reframing from food to metabolic solution. Because the plant itself is uncomplicated, it grows quickly. It enriches soil through nitrogen fixation. It produces edible leaves and seeds. It demands little. The systems around it demand more. More branding, more extraction, more urgency. But the seed remains what it always was. Affordable, accessible, adaptable. The final distinction is simple. A capsule treats fenugreek as intervention. A kitchen treats it as foundation. And foundations are quieter than interventions. They do not announce themselves. They do not promise transformation. They build resilience slowly. In an era obsessed with optimization, fenugreek offers something less glamorous: consistency. The seed never needed to be rescued. It never needed rediscovery. It only needed continuity. The question is not whether we will continue buying it in bottles. The question is whether we will remember that the most effective health tools were once ordinary enough to live in our kitchens. Because sometimes the difference between prevention and correction is not chemistry. It is memory.